Big LEZ'S League, an all rugby league experience.
Hello, welcome back to Big LEZ'S League. If you are watching on the YouTube, make sure to go ahead and click the subscribe button, become a part of the Big LEZ'S League community. We are also on Instagram, TikTok. We are on the Spotify, Apple Podcast, all podcasting platforms. All of the links will be in the description below, but let's get straight into it. We're going to be talking about AJ Brimson and the Gold Coast Titans. Obviously, yesterday we witnessed one of the greater Titans wins. They won 66-6 over a Warriors side who had Adam Fanua-Blake, they had Sean Johnson, they had all the pieces to win this game. Unfortunately, they couldn't get the job done. 66-6, an absolute thrashing off the back of a Jaden Campbell blinder. Keanu Keeney looking absolutely outstanding over the past few weeks. It does raise the question, though, of what's going to happen with AJ Brimson. When is he going to come back into this side? And when he does, where does he come back? Does he come back at fullback? Does he come back at 5'8"? Or does he come back in another position we might not expect? We're going to go through all the possibilities and read out some lineups with AJ Brimson in a few different positions. We'll start off with the fullback jersey.
20 minutes later.
Right, so just written down here, I've got a 17 that I've just written down off the top of my head for the Gold Coast Titans, and we'll be going off this, adding AJ Brimson into a few different positions and then shifting him around live. The 17 I've got written down here without AJ Brimson is Keanu Keeney, fullback, Alafiana Khan-Pereira and Philip Sami, wings, Brian Kelly, Jojo Fafita, centers, Campbell and Foran halves, Mo Fodawaker and Josiah Pahulu in the front row, Verrills at 9, Fermor, Fafita back row, Klesser Haas 13, Randall, Ellie Clark, Keenan Palacia and Isaac Liu on the bench. That's the 17 we've got here. It's a random 17. It's not the best 17. It's just very similar to what they had named on the weekend. Just off the top of my head, who's in what position. So we're going to be shifting a few guys around based off where we fit AJ Brimson into the team. So first, if AJ Brimson goes into fullback, you would think that Keanu Keeney goes either into 14, or he goes into the halves. But obviously then Jaden Campbell, I don't think he'd move, so would rule out the halves. Let's just go. If Keeney goes out of the fullback position, it's most likely going to be in that 14 jersey. I can't see him going into the centers because I think that just defensively, he's not big enough of a body to handle the centers. And plus, when you've already got a weak defensive edge on the left with Kelly and AKP, Alafiana Khan-Pereira, I probably wouldn't want to add to that by chucking Keanu Keeney into the mix as well and just making it a little bit weaker on the edges in terms of the defense. You want to keep the defense quite solid there. In the back line, for the most part, I don't think Keeney defending in a new position is going to really help there. So I'd rule out Keeney going into the centers. If AJ was to go to fullback, Keeney would go to 14, and Randall would most likely come out of the 17. He'd either go into 9 or he'd come out of the 17 for me. Verrills, after the 80 minutes that he put on the weekend, I think should start at 9. So yeah, as I said, if Keeney goes into 14, Randall either goes into the 17 as a forward, which he's been playing similar to what he played on the weekend. He's sort of in that roaming lock forward role, or he drops out for me. Klesser Haas, when he comes back, he's straight in. He's been outstanding at 13. I think that he keeps his spot. So as I said, if Keeney goes to 14, Randall drops out. The second possibility is for AJ to go into the centers. If AJ goes into the centers, he'll go into left center. Brian Kelly will move into right center. And then I would probably have one of Sami or Jojo Fafita on the wing. It's a tough one for me. It's a real tough one because Sami is such a competitor, but Jojo Fafita is an absolute freak. If I have to make the decision gun to head, it'd probably be Sami due to experience, and Jojo Fafita would most likely drop out. But I'm keeping Kelly in there no matter what side he's on. We saw it the other week when he had to move into that right center role. He does quite well on either center. Defensively can be a bit of a liability, so you could realistically have Philip Sami in that right center spot with Fafita on the wing. But in the case of moving a few players around, and in the case of this podcast, for me, AJ goes, if he goes into the centers, Kelly would then move to right center. and Sami would be on that right wing. So the back five would read Keeney at fullback, Alafiana Khan Pereira, Sami wings, AJ left center, Kelly on the right hand side. That's if AJ was to move into center. Now, the next one is a little bit more complicated. If AJ goes into 5'8", which I doubt it, I think it's actually not as likely for us to see AJ go into that number 6 role. I think if he comes back, it's going to be at fullback or in the centers. But if he does go into 5'8", I think Campbell moves straight into fullback. And then Keeney would then go to 14. I think that, as I said, in my personal opinion, AJ would either come back at fullback or in the centers. I don't think he comes back in the halves after how Campbell's been performing. But then again, you could say the same thing about Keanu Keeney there at fullback. I don't know how you're going to fit AJ back there when Keanu Keeney has been absolutely amazing there at fullback. So, yeah, look, I mean, the most likely position for me for AJ to come back would be in the centers, which means that Jojo Fafita and Philip Sami would miss out on selection in the best 17. But AJ, yeah, he's in the 5'8". In the 5'8", if he was to come back, in the 5'8" role, then you'd obviously see Campbell go into fullback for me, Keeney go into that 14, or Keeney to drop out of the 17. But then, as I said, I mean, it's going to be hard to kick Keeney out after the few weeks that he's had here as well. Now, I want to throw a bit of a curveball at you. If AJ Brimson was to go into a roaming 13 role, is to start the game at 13. We've seen it a lot with Kurt Mann. We've seen it a lot with Dylan Walker. These sort of guys making that 13 spot their own. If AJ, and this is really rogue of me, was to go into a roaming 13 role to start at 13, and this is just a way to fit all of them into the side, Campbell keeps his spot at 6. Keeney keeps his spot at fullback. AJ goes into 13. Haas would then, for me, go into the front row. Klesser Haas. So your starting front row for the rest of the year would be Mo Fodawaker and Klesser Haas. Bahulu would either go onto the bench or drop out of the 17. Most likely, he'd drop out of the 17. And your bench would be Randall, Clark, Palacia, and Isaac Liu. Bahulu's been great starting in the front row for the Titans over the past few weeks. I just think Klesser Haas has been absolutely outstanding, and you've got to have him in the side somewhere. So Klesser Haas would move into the front row for me. You'd have a very mobile pack, and Paulu would drop out just due to lack of experience there. And Klesser's form, as I said, has been outstanding. So a bit of a rogue one there in terms of that roaming guy. If AJ then was to go into 14, which I doubt it with the extension that he signed, and obviously the talk about him being the king there up on the Gold Coast, I doubt that he'd be going onto the bench. But if he was to go into 14, again, you'd see Keeney keep his spot at fullback. You'd see Campbell keep his spot at 5'8". Pretty much the whole rest of the lineup would be the same. The only guy you'd see drop out would be either Randall or Isaac Liu for me. In terms of guys coming off the bench, if you want to keep Randall in there as a forward. But most likely it would be Randall dropping out of the 17 if AJ was to go into that 14. I think most likely the guy to go to 14 would be Keanu Keeney. I think Jaden Campbell will keep his spot at 6. I think the most likely spot, though, for AJ to come back, if they want to fit all of these guys into this team, would be left center. And the big reason for me would be the weakness defensively of that left center spot. I know that attacking-wise, AJ wasn't so good when he did move into center. But yeah, in defense, he made some huge defensive plays. Defensively was quite strong. I think he was right center last time he came in, but I think I'd be moving him over to the left. You'd have AJ Brimson and Alafiana Khan Pereira parked on that left-hand side, along with Dave Fafita and Jaden Campbell. That edge would be stacked, absolutely stacked. Then the right edge, you would have Brian Kelly and Sami. Sami would help Kelly out a lot with his defense. So you have Kelly and Sami. You then have Firma there as well on that right-hand side, along with Kieran Foran. So still a pretty strong edge on that right-hand side. I think it works best in terms of the strike. I think that AJ Brimson would get a roaming license too if he was to move back into the centers. Obviously, attacking-wise, as we said, didn't really get enough of the ball. Only ran for about 50 to 60 meters per game there at center. Defensively solid, but attacking-wise just didn't get enough of the ball. So I'd be giving him a bit of a roaming license if he was to go back into the centers. But I think that if he does go back into center, it would be left, and that's exactly where I'd be putting him. I think I'd be putting him at left center when he does come back into this side. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. That was your deep dive going into when AJ Brimson comes back into the team. Where does he go? What position will he play? I think it's center. Let me know what you guys think in the description below. Make sure to go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube. All the socials are in the description below, so make sure you go ahead and follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We have a bunch of content coming out on there, so make sure you become a part of the big LEZ'S League community, and we'll see you guys in the next one.